Hey, everybody. This is Tracy Stuckrath with Thrive Meetings and Events and the host of the Eating at a Meeting podcast. This is the live edition that we do every Wednesday on YouTube and in the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group and Thrive Facebook page. And on the show, I talk to experts in all facets of food and beverage so that we can get a better understanding of how we all can work together to create safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for our family members, our guests, our attendees, anybody that we know, because we all want to sit down and enjoy a meal together because it is so valuable and so many lessons can be learned. On today's show, I'm excited. Tomorrow is Earth Day. If you haven't been paying attention or looking at that, tomorrow is Earth Day. It has actually been officially Earth Day since 1970 is, I think, that date that I had. It was first celebrated in 1970, and then it was officially named that 1990. So we're here to celebrate that and talk with my good friend and Chance Thompson, who is a speaker, writer, artist, consultant, who is crafting a creative resource and consultancy firm called VIRIDESCENT. And with VIRIDESCENT, he and his colleagues are building an immersive sustainability experience called Viriverse. I hope I said that right. Through an equation of circularity, art, and science to inspire storytelling and impact from sustainability champions around the world. And I'm going to have him explain all of that so that we all understand what that means. But I also, that last part of it is that as meeting professionals, I want us all, or not want us all, I do want us all, but we all should be champions of sustainability as we create our events. So Chance, hi.
Hello, Tracy. Thanks for having me. Exciting to be here and testing you this morning with all the weird things we have going on. So very well done.
Thank you. In the event planner toolkit, right?
That's right.
So explain to us before we dive into how we become sustainability champions. And I accidentally joked just before we got online is like, we don't want the earth will shatter. We don't want the earth to shatter. We want the earth to be here and be sustainable so that we can have living life and your little Milo, who's 7 months old, can live for forever in a clean world, green world. So explain to us what VIRIDESCENT is and what this Viriverse community or experience is called or going to do.
Yeah, so ultimately what VIRIDESCENT is here to do is to really be a place that anybody that cares about sustainability in any way, shape, or form can plug into and find people of like mind, find resources, find strategies and frameworks for how to actually make the impact it is that they want to make. It is not so easy to be a sustainability champion sometimes or a hobbyist because not everybody can necessarily make it a part of their day job. Everybody wants to, or a lot of people want to. So how do you do that, right? So we are going to be a really helpful resource for doing that. And that's kind of, there's a bunch of different ways we're going to do it. But you mentioned the Viriverse. So what we are doing is building out kind of an immersive and creative experience where people can kind of touch, feel, and experience and almost like co-create sustainability. Okay. A lot of times when you talk to people about what sustainability is, their eyes kind of glaze over and they're like, I don't really, what is this thing, right? So we really believe that it needs to be brought to life. So we're using kind of that formula you mentioned, right? So circularity is this idea of, right? It's actually nothing really new, right? The recycling logo is a circular graphic, right? So it's about creating systems that are less wasteful. Right now, we have a very linear way of doing things, which is just kind of taking resources, making things, and then generally wasting most of it, right? So rather than taking that strategy, we recycle our things, we upcycle our stuff, we're more efficient with our resources, we buy locally, we source locally, all these different things. And then we're using art and science because art to us is one of humans' best kind of expressions, right? It's the thing we are maybe better at than anything else is creating art. So we do a lot of auditory and visual experiences through music, through graphic design, through nature photography, things like that. And then, of course, we use science to teach people about the amazingness of the natural ecosystem. So one of the things that we use a lot is biomimicry, which is the taking of some sort of system in nature and then figuring out how to pull that over into the human world and to human designs. And so like the way mushrooms decompose things from nature is a good model for how we should recycle and biodegrade our stuff more. So just cool stuff like that. That is I guess the only other thing I'll mention, and we'll kind of talk about this when we get into the sustainability champion space, but we are really trying to empower and support the people that care about this stuff to feel like they can truly make the change they want to. Because the sustainability professional or champion kind of wants to change the world, like, well, lofty goals. So we want to help them feel like they can do that. So we actually build them like an alter ego character of sorts, like a sustainability superhero kind of.
Okay.
And then we use that as a way to support their platform. So if you're out there running a little nonprofit that's trying to do better recycling in your community, or in the event space, if you're offering food rescue, we'll turn their whole platform into a fun, creative kind of Viraversy sort of thing. And the goal is to help them increase their reach, their impact, and their revenue potential as well, by telling stories in the Viraverse. Yeah.
Okay, so their reach, their impact, and their
revenue opportunity.
So a lot of people probably think that sustainability is a budget sucker. It takes out your budget. And I'm sure that in some respects that it does, but can it actually help us maintain our revenue, keep profit? Or is it a big spend?
So it kind of depends on where you're at in your journey, though what I always tell people right up front is start thinking about that, truly the triple bottom line piece of it, right? Think about how it affects your people, how you can then, be better stewards to the planet, and then how to make money doing this. Because the way I always describe sustainability to people is that it's a lot like technology. It kind of touches everything, but it's more human than technology is, right? Even though technology is a human creation. It touches all sorts of different things. So it's about adaptation, resiliency, being more efficient with how people do their workflows. It's kind of looking at everything humans do and saying, can we tweak that just a little bit and maybe make it just a little bit better? And so if you think about it from that lens, it can take you on a better path money-wise. Now, of course, if you're trying to, as a business, as an event, you want to, build out some sustainability programming, you're going to need some staffing to do some of that, right? But one of the things I always encourage events to do in particular is build a sponsorship program for it. Go to your stakeholder group and have a sustainability sponsorship. And I would recommend avoiding the green sponsor and look at it more as a sustainability sponsor. And the reason I say that is that sustainability is really more of a kind of people and human sort of imperative than it is a planetary one. If humans are in a better space and feel empowered to build a better world, the planet will probably be a good, healthy part of that, right? So sustainability sponsorships are a really good way to look at it if you're a planner putting together a meeting. And that can help offset any of the costs that come from labor, or if you're doing communication material and you have resources you're paying for and things like that. And then also, look at what existing resources you have available and just attach sustainability to that, right? Okay. So that's a big help too. Yeah.
And that's that whole concept of getting sponsors for different things. It allows you to broaden the standard, sponsorship opportunities. Oh, we're going to do our bag, or we're going to do our pen, or whatever. It allows you to open up a variety of different thought processes on that sponsorship opportunities. And one thing that I would want to say, though, is like, you want to find a sponsor that believes in that aspect of your event and that sustainability element. And this has nothing to do with sustainability, but if you've ever heard the story of Shaquille O'Neal and the General, that was the only company that would give him insurance when he was 19 years old and starting in the NBA. And he met the CEO of the company years later at a franchise conference, and he said he told the guy the story, and that's how they partnered. And so making sure that when you're looking at those sponsors and those companies to partner with you on your events, you want to make sure that they have they're aligned with the same missions and values that you are trying to do. So
yeah, that's a good kind of thing to touch on really quickly too, is it's easy to greenwash or, kind of pretend like you're being more sustainable than you're not. It can happen accidentally too. Like people don't often, sometimes they do it on purpose, but other times it's an accidental sort of thing. If you're really intentional about how you're setting up your sponsorship that way, like you speak to, that will help you avoid. And so what greenwashing is basically you build communication material and marketing material, storytelling stuff, and you say, we're a sustainable event. At first, I would caution, don't anybody say that you're a sustainable event, because it doesn't really exist yet. We're still trying to figure out how to truly do that, right? But you can say, our event is taking action on more sustainable practices and things like that. But saying that we're a sustainable event when you're actually not, that's greenwashing. It's kind of somewhat false marketing material.
right.
And then I would also say, the story about Shaq too, that's about human health at a young age, right? Human health is sustainability. So I would say it actually fits.
It really does. Yeah. And Shaun White's another example of somebody who believes in what the sponsors, he doesn't partner with anybody he doesn't believe in their product. So same kind of thing. So, in the description of this session, and I said at the beginning, is that how do we become sustainability champions as event planners? And I have this slide in my presentations that I do. It's got a plate and it drops words on there on everything that we have on our plate as meeting professionals, whether you're on the catering side or the meeting planning, you're the planner. This is another thing. And we've been talking about sustainability for years and how to do it, but how can we become champions in an easy way? And and full disclosure, I guess, is that Chance and I think you and I really met through the Events Industry Council and working on the sustainability standards rewrite. And so, and I know we're going through and trying to make those even more simpler. That's not even the right word, even simpler for us to implement. So can you touch on how can we become champions in an easy way?
Yeah, so to give a little bit of my background in that space, so before I started working on this startup called Viridescent, I spent the last 5 years helping Salt Lake build their sustainable destination strategy. And we were faced with that. There was a time where I was not doing this work kind of professionally. I wanted to, but I didn't know how to get into it. And so the Salt Palace was interested in doing something. They were kind of interested in obtaining like a certification, some sort of program that would help them formalize it. And so that was the EIC certification, was what they plugged into. And I was kind of like, can I please lead this kind of thing? And of course, everybody was like, sure, go ahead, right? This seems overwhelming, right? Go ahead. So the way we approached it was we put together a working committee, like a green team committee or a sustainability committee. And we focused on, we kind of came together with the goal of like, okay, we're going to do all this stuff for the certification. We're going to address waste and energy and water and all these other things. But we wanted to find something that felt like everybody would rally behind. Because again, some people are like, what is sustainability? And, some people care about waste, some don't, right? Some people care about energy, some don't. So we decided to focus on our community and really look at how can we take the wasted materials from the trade shows and put that out into the community and support the nonprofits in the local Salt Lake community. As you might imagine, every single person across our staff pretty much was like, yeah, we'll support this. We'll jump in and help out in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that would be my first recommendation, is to identify what you think kind of everybody's gonna get. So if you're in the eating in a meeting space, right, the food and beverage component of this thing, I would say focus on either healthy food or food rescue, right? Donating the leftover extra food. So like pick one thing to kind of start with, and you'll be amazed that by picking one thing, you'll kind of start to go on this journey and like climb the ladder. And before you know it, you'll have 7, 8 things that are just happening naturally, right? And because people tend to get kind of excited about this stuff. So that would be my biggest, highest level recommendation is pick one area that you think you can do something on, And it could even be simply just including it in your RFP. Say, hey, we're trying to get into the sustainability space, and we'd love for our caterer to share or our prospect caterers to share what their sustainability practices are, because they might tell you then what they're good at. And you could then say, okay, that's our one thing. You're really good at food rescue, so we'll do that. And you start there. Yeah.
I love that, because it does, you can't, and I just posted the link to the sustainability standards, and I'm going to tell you, everybody, right, when you look at them, you're going to go, what?
Yeah.
And because it does break it down to in a variety of different aspects of it. And, even as a meeting organizer, I mean, the very first step on that is to actually just say, hey, we want to do something, mm-hmm. and write a statement that's saying, hey, we're trying to be more sustainable, and we're going to start with this, and you could be the champion of that or whatever, or pick somebody to do that. But, even the first step is to say, hey, we want to look at this and how can we do it? Right. Mm-hmm. I like that. And then, and even like you said, just adding it to the RFP and saying, okay, what kind of sustainability, even just asking the questions, what kind of sustainability practices do you, hotel or convention center, catering company, transportation company, have in place?
Yes.
Yep. Starting that way.
And there is going to be some really great stuff coming through with the final versions of the new EIC standards that will take you on a bit of a journey more than the new ones do. So like you say, Tracy, right? You look at them and like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff in here, right? So the new version of the standards, and to clarify, I'm actually on the Sustainability and Social Impact Committee for the Events Industry Council. And I was heavily involved in kind of participating, and then at one point chairing a part of that process to make them better from because believe it or not, they used to be way, way harder than they are now. Right now, what's nice about them is you can look at that huge list of all these things, and to get certified, you only have to achieve like half of them. Before, you had to achieve kind of all of them to get a level. So, but I still participate on their sustainability committee. And so one of the things that is being discussed is having like a pledge level where you come on and kind of pledge your support for sustainability, which that kind of exists with the guiding principles that kind of define what sustainable events are. Right. But now we're also looking at where you could do like an entry level or like a foundational level that is it's basically to just have plans for stuff and try. You don't have to necessarily hit any certain metrics. You don't have to have a particular landfill diversion rate. You don't have to be sourcing so much renewable energy, all the crazy stuff, right? That's later. Worry about that stuff later, right? Just start kind of dabbling in we have a waste plan, we have a food rescue plan, some of those kinds of things. So the standards will kind of be more of a journey from beginner to expert kind of thing. And that's really exciting to us for, either an actual sustainability champion or somebody who aspires to be one. It'll be helpful for any and all, I think, which is really good.
And I love that. And I sat in those conversations a couple of weeks ago, and I really do think that it's going to help a lot more people get on board, right? Mm-hmm. And push that effort. Okay, so kind of already asked you this question in a little bit of way, but where is the best place to start? And you mentioned the RFP and just making a standard, but there's an acronym that I learned through Meet Green. Thank you, Amy. And oh my God, Amy and
Nancy.
Yes. Oh my God, Nancy, I love you. I'm so sorry. Your name just skipped my brain. Amy and Nancy from a long time ago, and it was actually the Greens Meetings Industry Council in Portland, and it was the acronym FLOSS, which was fresh, local, organic, sustainable, and what was the other one?
Smart.
Thank you.
Seasonal. There's a bunch of these kind of become interchangeable.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So, but you've added a letter R on there. So again, if you'll go over what that acronym means and how people can start, because I think this is also really important too, that you could do this at home. Since a lot of us are eating at home now, I mean, how can you incorporate that into your daily lives versus also your event space?
Yeah. So let's talk about FLOSS, or what we call Flosser. which I think about flossers, and those little plastic flossers are not the best
Right.
for the environment, but they have reusable ones now that have like interchangeable stuff and
Yes,
all
they
kinds
do.
of cool stuff. Yeah. So check out some of those. I won't recommend any particular product or anything, but so starting with the F, so fresh or fair, I kind of go with fair. So fair trade, meaning that would be ethical sourcing. So wherever you're getting from, there is something called fair trade certification, but there are others out there. And sometimes someone doesn't get certified because they don't have the money to go through a certification process. But basically what it means is that it's coming through an ethical supply chain, right? The labor practices of growing and making whatever it is that you're buying or bringing into your event is done in a healthy way for humans, right? And again, sustainability starts with people first. So that's fair trade or fair. And then local. This is such a wonderful opportunity for planners to build healthier relationships with their destinations, because a lot of times it's cheaper, easier to go through a mass distributor of some of these foods and things, but there's also such a wonderful opportunity to impact local farmers and the destinations that you're going to. And a lot of caterers are becoming, and always kind of have, but I think it's becoming more of a badge of honor to claim how much they are able to source locally. And so that's a really, really great opportunity for planners to help them be successful in doing that, is ask for local foods. The other thing about local foods is you can often more easily find the O, which is organic. And organic is actually healthier for people, right? We kind of know that, but it's also tastier typically because it's just a much healthier grow process. And then it's also healthier for the planet because organic farming typically uses more regenerative agriculture practices such as cover cropping, which helps keep the carbon down in the soil rather than it releasing into the atmosphere. So organic is really good there. And then seasonal, this is made easier by sourcing locally, as well as getting seasonal food is infinitely more sustainable because when you're buying stuff out of season, it's traveling further distances to get to your event typically. And again, seasonal is so fresh, so delicious, and really tasty. Then you have smart, and smart is kind of about how you manage your supply chain, how you manage your water usage. So sometimes events will opt to do more tea service than coffee service because there's less water footprint there. Juice also has a pretty big water footprint and carbon footprint. So sometimes being smart about that is good. And then our last one, so making it Flosser, is rescue. So food rescue. And the reason we put this in the Flosser space is because there is always probably going to be some leftover food. Not a lot, hopefully, because part of food rescue is reducing your waste on the order, which can save you money. So we talk about sustainability opportunities to save money. It used to be, what was it, 1.5 times the food you thought you would need, you'd order in your guarantees or whatever, right? And it's like, well, naturally, you're going to waste money, you're going to waste food. So the food rescue component is really awesome. And I will actually recommend a resource. There's a nonprofit called Rock and Wrap It Up. And the gentleman,
and those guys,
yeah, they're awesome. What they'll do is they'll help you find a food rescue partner in the local community, and they'll work directly with your caterer too to help them kind of facilitate like pickups or drop-offs of extra food and things like that. So that's kind of Flosser. The best place to start to hit any or all of these, and again, if you think you can only do one or two, that's okay. That's a lot better than hitting none of them, right? Is just talk to your caterers, right? Put it in, and you could even, this would be something you could put in the RFP response. You could say, or the RFP release so that people can respond to it. You could say something along the lines of, we're trying to do a sustainable event. Can you please respond with the acronyms of Flosser or Floss, whichever one you want to use, right? And then that way it guides the caterer. Okay, I can talk about our ethical sourcing, talk about our local, talk about what we're doing with organics, what's going to be in season during your event, how to, what some of our water conservation practices are, and then, food rescue components too, because a lot of caterers are starting to do this as a standard too. I know Salt Lake definitely had that with Utah Food Services, and now with Center Plate as a standard process. So yeah, that would be a good way to frame your RFP. Yep.
Yeah, no, and I really like that, to having them answer what they're doing with that acronym really helps spell it out versus just saying, hey, tell us what you're doing sustainability wise. Yeah.
And what's great about that too, Tracy, is it makes it so easy for the planner. How long would it take you to write that into your RFP? 5-10 minutes, right? Quick and easy. Don't have to get overly complicated about it. and that'll take you on a path to a more sustainable food and beverage for sure.
The only challenge I see with a lot of that, though, are the platforms that a lot of planners use to put the RFP out and send it out to, hundreds of people at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one that actually does my own RFP and types it up in a Word document and sends it to the CVBs and DMOs to send it out. I don't use any technology to do that. So, that's a whole nother level of getting these technology companies to add that actually as a standard question that you have. And I'm sure that those technology platforms have the ability for you to ask your own questions that you want to, but making sure that you do include that. So, but on bringing that on is like CVBs and DMOs. I mean, you should be able to answer those questions as well. And that is an aspect of the Events Industry Council is destinations. So understanding, what caterers do have a good philosophy around or good practices around Flosser, as well as what hotels do and convention centers, so that you can actually sell your destination. And was it you or somebody was telling me about a planner who was going on an RFP or put out an RFP and was asking questions about it, and the venue had no clue of what to do or who to donate the food and beverage to at the end. And so she took it. She said, if you figure it out, we'll do it. And so she did it. She did the research and found that vendor for them to do it with. And hopefully that vendor is now using it across the board. So sometimes it might take us planners to do the work to get it done.
Yeah, and that's problematic, right? That makes it more difficult for planners because planners are managing a whole lot of things, right? What I would say is don't be afraid to use your power, right? Planners have a lot of power with their partners and things. So just, keep pushing them, and that'll help some. If you get those pushbacks and things like that, try to figure out a way to make it an easier sell for them as well. Just try to be creative in how you approach it. It could be like, well, okay, look, let's just do rescue for this particular meal set or something like that, right? You can be flexible in some of those spaces too. Try to negotiate and navigate to what feels like a good partnership. Yeah.
Right. Because we do want it to be a partnership. Because Jim Speller's told me this one story about this planner who they put it in the contract, Rock and Wrap It Up was coming to do it. And a week out, the property's like, please don't make us do this. And, we don't want that. We don't want that deflation of what we're trying to do, right? We want to make sure that everybody's in on it and is working together to make sure that we're doing it the right way, or, just doing it, making those donations. So why is the food and beverage aspect important to the larger sustainability conversation?
Oh, yes. So
Can of worms.
Yes. All right. So I think I'm trying to remember exactly where it ranks. It's in the top 5, I believe. So for anybody that doesn't know what Project Drawdown is, I'd certainly recommend Googling it. It's really fascinating. So it was a book that was written by a collective of people all over kind of humanity, right? All perspectives, social classes and things. It was led by a guy named Paul Hawken, who's an environmental kind of activist and scientist. And they ranked the top 100 things that people can do for climate change. And food, not wasting food specifically, is like number 2, 3, 4, somewhere in the top 5. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. So the reason being is that it's the numbers in a lot of ways. So this is probably a little bit dated data from 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. But the UN estimates that we lose $680 billion worth of food every year. We waste, like globally, we waste, it's like 40% is just, it's unbelievable, right? And, that's a lot of money that's wasted. But then you have 1 in 8, 1 in 9 people globally that are food insecure, right? So you have the human element of it. But when you grow all that food and all the carbon emissions associated with agriculture, which is a lot, right? Giant tractors, cattle, grazing, all the stuff that's associated with food. and you grow and you use all that stuff and then you waste it, we're just, I mean, how much carbon is being released into the air that didn't actually serve any real purpose? I suppose it made money for some in theory, but it also lost money for a lot of people that bought it and then didn't actually use it, right? So that is where that becomes just such an incredibly important part of the carbon conversation. The other thing that's maybe even more of a threat than climate change, which this is actually somewhat new information to me, that it's actually a bigger problem for us, is soil degradation. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our big agricultural practices that are not sustainable or regenerative by design, those are destroying the health of the soil. And so we're losing a lot of land and space for the ecosystem. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of biodiversity as a result. You know, the numbers are kind of frightening. I'm not even going to say them because I am not sure exactly what the current metrics are right now, but we've lost a lot of species here over the last like 50, 60 years. And some of that is due to loss of habitat. And the loss of habitat is for humans to be able to grow more food. So again, we're growing a bunch of food and then we're wasting it and we're destroying the soil. We're making some mistakes here. So it's really, really important to address. And I know that a lot of farmers are actually starting to be really, really proud and excited to do regenerative agriculture practices.
Yep.
And one of the things that's kind of pushing this is that there's not a lot of youth that wants to go into farming in today's world, right? All the spoiled millennials and Zs, right? And throw myself into that mix. But like Zs especially are coming in, they only want to do jobs that they feel like are taking action on some of these global problems that we're having. And so farming is one outlet for them to do that. So that's really exciting. So I think that caterers will have better options, which means planners will have better options for where the farms are at and what they're doing. Right. That'll help a lot.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned the soil. I'm losing my necklace. That I actually heard it or saw it in action or in being promoted when I went to Slow Food Salon, Terra Madre Salon del Gusto in Italy. It's Slow Foods every other year biannual event. And there was a campaign and it was Soil for You. And I think it was European promotion at the time. But that was the first time that I had heard it. I know that one of my farmer friends in Georgia, Will Harris at, oh my gosh, Will Harris and his farm in Southwest Georgia, you know, the farm originally 4 generations or 5 generations now, way back when it was, you know, regenerative and all of that, it got converted. And then he and his daughters have reconfigured the land and rebuilt back the soil based on their practices of using organic and rotating the crops and rotating the animals. And it has actually made the soil a lot stronger and healthier than it ever probably was. So I think that's a really important thing. And planners need to understand that in the sense that we need to just be buying from the farmers who are, you know, growing organically and locally. And want to get involved in it too.
Yeah. So let's say that, let's kind of throw out an example here. I want to speak to a couple of things you said in there. So if we think about, like, let's look at a situation where the planner does not get a lot of support from their food and beverage provider, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, what can you do? Well, one of the things you mentioned there is this idea of like slow food. And the thing that is always like, when I was in high school, college and stuff, I somehow started to become aware that I was like, I eat really fast. Like I just like eat all my food and then I'm done and then I move on about my day. That's a very American sort of thing.
Yes.
And I actually got kind of ill with some GI challenges and stuff. And I found that eating slower and really enjoying my food and being intentional about that helped me a ton. Well, here we are with COVID and the new wave of events coming forward. Are we going to be able to push attendees so quickly, so hard like we did before? No, we won't, right? It's going to change. And so there's an opportunity to use food as that slowdown mechanism where like, let meals really be slow, let people socialize and network and really take their time And you can make a fun, compelling story for the foods too. You could have little cards that talk about where the food comes from. You can do a lot of fun things there. But
Right.
one of the things that is beautiful about the way humans interact with food is it's like one of our most cultural and like experiential things that we do. And so at events, when it's like, oh, grab and go and then go on to your next session and all that stuff, it's like we're kind of missing the point. And then people don't actually enjoy the food a ton, right? And as
Right.
we all know in our surveys, one of the biggest things they respond to is how was the food, right? So if
Exactly.
you're making the food well curated and intentional, right, it's huge. And I'll read a quote. I think Tracy, you've heard this. We talked about this on Clubhouse not too long ago, but this quote is that the shared meal elevates eating from a mechanical process of fueling the body to a ritual of family and community, from the mere animal biology to an act of culture, right? This is a thing we do better than nature. Nature just goes to town, right? They eat their food and they move on. But humans do it a little differently. So there's an opportunity there. And the thing about slowing it down too is your attendees might be less likely to waste food as a result of that.
True. And we got to figure out how to balance, the COVID practices or safety practices that I've heard recently of just scurrying everybody through because
right.
We don't want people to sit down and chat with each other and eat food together. We've got to balance that out. But yes, 100%. But it's going to have to be rethinking our agendas and our timelines. And it reminds me of an event, that I planned a couple of years ago, a couple of times in a row. And the CEO is like, nope, let's get him through. I'm like, you've got to give him more than a 10-minute break. Nope, we got to get all this education in. I'm like, no, let's slow it down because one, they're not going to absorb all of that education for one. And two, you're going to make them regurgitate their food, because they're not being able to, enjoy that food. And it also reminds me of Hallmark movies, which I'm sure you're not watching, Chance. But like the way that they actually celebrate these two people that are falling in love and, oh my God, I love your food. And they're enjoying it and sensing the flavors. And that's what we want our attendees to do too. It's really cheesy that I watch. Everybody watches.
No, I love it. Everybody watches something cheesy. I'm a huge Marvel cinematic nerd, so yeah, right.
I'm right there with you too. So I like both sides of that equation.
That's why we have our sustainability superheroes and such. Honestly,
exactly. Okay, so you mentioned Rock and Wrap It Up, and then when I asked you for resources, you also gave me another one, which is a really good movie, Kiss the Ground. And then Gather. So tell me about that one because I haven't heard.
That's one of my favorite films I've watched in a long time in the sustainability space. So, and Kiss the Ground was actually supporting it. So Kiss the Ground is like a big thing, right? This big film that has Woody Harrelson as a narrator for it, and a really good, like they're really well supported. But Kiss the Ground is also supporting this film called Gather, which is about the like food sovereignty and the story of food told from the Native American and indigenous perspective. And it is so fantastic to listen and learn about like their wisdom around growing and nurturing nature and growing food for humans and things. And it's funny, I tend to eat a more plant-based diet, but after watching that, they talked about like how much the buffalo meant and means to their culture and to their health. And it actually, I'm like, maybe I should start eating buffalo burgers again, actually, because it was like one of those things. But it's a really special story of community resiliency, sustainable agriculture. They have like, I know it was kind of a cool look too between like the younger generations and the older generations. So I spoke about like younger generations. We need some of them to become farmers, right? Otherwise we're going to be in trouble. We get robots doing it. I mean, I guess maybe, but hopefully not. But they had a really cool store kind of feature around one of the younger generation members of this thing. And they're actually launching like they call it their mycelium curriculum. And for anybody that doesn't know what mycelium is, it is the root system of the forest, basically. But it's basically mushrooms. Mushrooms kind of drive the health of forests under the ground and up into the tree roots and all kinds of crazy things. But so the mycelium curriculum really resonated with me, and I actually follow their email list now, and they're doing some really cool stuff. So Gather is something to check out. It's really neat.
Put that in the chat. I've been typing frantically in the chat, adding everything down in here.
Mhm.
So we're coming up on 40 minutes. And you and I know we can talk forever about this. I don't have any questions from the audience yet. So, I should probably say, hey, if you've got any questions, let me know.
Please.
I'm talking to Chance Thompson of VIRIDESCENT and about sustainability and how we can all as meeting professionals become sustainability champions. That's what we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, 39 minutes.
It's gone quickly.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you've mentioned a little bit there about your own personal diet and your work at at the convention center at Salt Palace and with Utah Foods. So is there something that, what is a best practice that you've seen that you would love to see planners do across the board as it relates to meeting your dietary needs and sustainability practices?
Yes, mine are all over the board, as Tracy knows. They're weird, right? So I think for me personally, I would just love to see the ingredients that are in the food, right? And sometimes caterers are kind of protective of their secret formulas and stuff, right? So they don't put everything in there. Obviously, the 8, I think it is, the 8 allergens is really, really important.
It's about 9.
What's the 9th?
Sesame. It
Yes,
passed
okay.
House and Senate, so it's now going to the White House to get approved.
Got it. Okay. So that's helpful, but the allergens don't really help me much, except for I am allergic to milk. So I always appreciate knowing that, of course. But the more that can be labeled, the better, I think. And I also think that foodies and things, and there's a lot of foodies that just attend events, are always curious to know what's in the food. So I just say labeling. Just please label the meals. That is so helpful. And if you're not necessarily labeling the meals, make sure that your servers and everybody attached to the food and beverage operation knows what's in the food and can speak to that, right? Because they so often are not quite sure. They're like, yeah, I'm not sure if there's milk in there. I'm not sure if there's like onion in there or something weird like that, because I can't eat onion really or garlic in any major quantity. So that's the most important thing, is just know that either the attendee is informed via labeling or the staff can help if the attendee asks questions. Yeah.
Yep. 100% agree. And we can go on and talk about the challenges that we're going to have after COVID with all of that, but we're not going to talk about that right now.
Yes.
A whole nother conversation. So, okay. So the last question that I always ask everybody is, what is your favorite food and drink? And I love your answers, so I can't wait for you to share it.
They're weird. People make fun of me when they ask, because this is one of those questions I think every human has either been asked or has asked this question to someone, right? And it's a good one. So it's funny. My favorite food, and frankly, the last thing I'd like to eat as a last meal too, is what I'd call a gourmet peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so you have wheat bread is key for me personally. And then you do heavy peanut butter on one side, heavy jelly on another. And you mix in some honey with the peanut butter. So technically not plant-based in full, but I do actually think that honey is a source of vitality. And it's a really delicious thing, of course.
Yes.
And then I put sliced apples or bananas or strawberries or blueberries or something in the middle of it. So that's where the gourmet piece comes into it. But the reason for that for me is 2 things. One, it was kind of helped me survive when I was on my GI challenge and having issues with some of my health there. That was one thing I could eat. So I ate a lot of them then. But the other thing is it's my backpacking food. So when I'm out backpacking in nature, it is the thing I go to. And after hiking, 10 to 15 miles in a day, having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is about the most rewarding thing in the world. And so that's my food. Okay. The drink, I love tea, I love beer, I love, all kinds of other things and stuff. But for me, it's just water. Water's our life source. Like we are water. And like ice cold water, again, if you're on the backpacking trail and you're able to get some water, it's a good feeling, right? So yeah, maybe that's basic, but I have very specific reasons for it. And when you're in nature, when you're backpacking, basic is the best thing there is.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it tastes better out there too, I'll tell you. You can taste the salt and the sugar and all that stuff in a way you don't out here when we're just, finish our meal and move on to the next thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay. So I do want to ask you one more question, just because I would love to see who you would want to sit down and have that gourmet meal with.
Whoa. Anybody? Are we talking about like
dead or
anybody?
alive? Anybody.
Wow. Okay. That one, I was not expecting this question.
I just popped in my head.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. So I would say, I think I'd want to sit down with Jeanette Rankin, maybe.
Okay.
Oprah. I would want to sit down with some of the pioneering female leaders throughout history, and any of them, honestly, because the courage and strength to deal with some of the nonsense that society throws at them and be visionary leaders. There's lots of white men especially, but a lot of men out there that consider themselves visionaries, and like women don't see themselves that way, and there's a certain humility to that. So and Jeanette Rankin has a connection to my home state as well. So I think that would be my answer. Or something just ridiculous like Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, or some silly thing like that too, right? But no, I think it's a strong female leader, because I just think women have so many things to teach us about a more sustainable world. Yeah, that would be my answer, I think.
Thank you. I love that.
Or maybe just Tracy, honestly. I mean, speaking of visionary women, yes.
I will have a meal with you any day. Yes.
Yes, we did. And here in Park City not that long ago. It was lovely.
We did. It was very lovely. Good food in Park City. Yeah, I can't believe that's been a little over a year now that we were there. So yeah, and thank you for letting me use your parking spot. Okay, so everybody, this was another edition of the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and my fabulous guest today was Chance Thompson of VIRIDESCENT, and talking all about sustainability. We are here on every Wednesday live with a new guest talking about food and beverage in some sort of aspect. But you can also find us on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, everything. Share it with your friends and, listen to the guests. This is going to drop tomorrow, just so you know, Chance. So I think it's going to be episode 69.
Okay.
And I started this last summer. So I'm really proud of it. And if there's anybody that you want me to interview, please let me know. Maybe we'll get Oprah on here, or
well, how about that?
That would be a landfall. I would love that. So anyways, tune in anywhere, share it with your friends, and I will see you next week. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chance.
Thank you.